Thank you very much, the MC. At least I recognize you. I think the MC, I will be the first to recognize you here. Yeah. Your Excellency, Excellencies actually who are all here, distinguished delegates, captains of industries, I see so many of you, the General, have my heart for you. My dear colleagues actually that came also with me from Nigeria. For me, I have spent most of my life in the private sector. I actually got into politics after leaving the Dangote Group as a group managing director in the year 2018. Reason why I want to tell you, before you get the message, you need to understand the messenger first. So my background actually, I went to school in the US, Indiana State University. I did work in the US, in the oil and gas sector for a while. The funny thing about leadership that I have had over and over today, I'm so excited to sit down here and hear it. In the year 1997, I was working for Amoco. And Amoco was getting ready actually to acquire BP. And we were working very hard during that period. 1 year later, because of leadership, in 1998, which was actually a period that you have seen a lot of the international oil companies merging, Chevron, Texaco coming together, ExxonMobil coming together. Just of a sudden, because of leadership by Sir Jar Brown, and that's why I like to give that example here in London, BP now came and acquired Amoco. And we ended up now being BP Amoco, and now we don't hear Amoco anymore, we just hear BP. Because when they acquired us, that was the end of it. Just like you don't hear ExxonMobil anymore, you just hear Mobil. You don't hear Chevron Texaco anymore, you just hear Chevron and the rest of that. So I give you that little bit to understand the essence of leadership. Once there is a leadership, there is a vision, there is determination, and actually there is implementation, you have success. And that is what we need in Africa. And thank you very much, for those presentations that you have. Coming to Nigeria, I actually returned to Nigeria in the year 2000. I became the managing director of African Petroleum, which was one of the 8 petroleum product marketing companies. The first time I went into the downstream sector. And then after that, I now went into the Dangote Group. Dangote, by the way, for those who don't understand him, is the richest African, or the richest black man in the world, the way they describe him right now. So I was in Dangote when we came up with the idea that Nigeria, the biggest oil producer, at the time producing over 2.5 million barrels per day, we were importing petroleum products. Why? Because of leadership. So we said, let us have the idea of a company within Nigeria building a factory of refinery so that instead of importing, let us be exporting. It looked like a dream, but in Dangote we had this slogan that nothing is impossible. And this young man who is less than 70 years old, a little bit younger than the general, came up with what you call the leadership that is needed. Today, we no longer import petroleum products because of the 650,000 barrels per day. We now export petroleum products from Africa, from Nigeria to other African countries. One, we are exporting actually even to US and to other places because of leadership. I tell leadership, I like what the gentleman from Mauritius actually mentioned, that there is no one item that you can define leadership that fits all of Africa. Every country in Africa, you go to Somalia, for instance, because of the crisis in Somalia, they will have a different definition. You come to Mauritius, and I like it when he clearly defined that Mauritius was actually, people were still Mauritius. I went to Mauritius because I was running a sugar factory before in Dangote. And so sugar is what made Mauritius, what it was, so exciting. How somebody can just take sugar cane and turn it into wealth. And that's what they did in Mauritius. You can't do that actually if you go to Somalia because you don't have that kind of opportunities. So this is what is happening, and I just love it. When I sat down there, I had the definition. I think the facilitator, you did a wonderful job. I want to thank you for what you did. By asking that question, let me hear from you, what is the meaning of leadership? And the general is going to tell you it's falling down from 10,000 feet, that's his own. So these are the issues that we need to do. And I think we need to have a lot of this. I want to congratulate you, Gent, for what you are doing here. And I think we should be having more of this. And you should be inviting more of people in position of leadership so they can sit down and hear what is happening. And then we can go from there. All that is not part of my presentation, but just what I had earlier today. So thank you very much for that. My presentation is now going to be shortened, based on what I had. Where is Nasarawa State? Nasarawa State happens to be at the central part of Nigeria, just very close to Abuja. For those, I'm more familiar with the US, I'm sorry, than UK. So you can equate Nasarawa State with Maryland and Washington, D.C. That's what Nasarawa State is. So Abuja is the seat of power, but living in Abuja is extremely expensive, just like living in Washington, D.C. So what people do is to go to the area where there is over 27,000 kilometers area, where there is over 2 million hectares of arable land for agriculture, and that is Nasarawa State. So people prefer to go and live in Nasarawa State and come to work in Abuja, and that's what it is. So that's our state. And so I was in Dangote when I discovered that that's my state. And in my state, they say they discovered some hydrocarbons. And nothing has been done. And the slogan of Nasarawa State, just like every state has its own, is the home of solid minerals. All kinds of solid minerals in the state. Have hydrocarbons, have lithium, have tin, tantalite, barite, lead, zinc. You can call it. We have it in huge commercial deposits in Nasarawa State. Talk about the oil. So when we came up with the idea that yes, since we have this oil, let us start with exploration exercise, being my background. So we worked with the national oil company called the NNPC, and then we were able now to start from there. We ended up working with the NNPC to do what they call the exploration well, which was just about 12,000 feet. After drilling the well, that's when you determine. By drilling that well, they came to discover that indeed there was over 1 million barrels of oil in that location alone. It's only in the Niger Delta of Nigeria, that you can find that kind of quantity of oil in one location. And even in the Niger Delta, you have to go into deep water, like the big fields we have in Nigeria, called the Bonga, the Agbani, the Erha, all these fields. That's where you will find. So what I'm all trying to say is that Nigeria is so rich, Africa is so rich. What we're lacking is visionary leaders that will take and deliver and implement and get it there. That's why I'm excited to be here. That's why I took my time to say that I must be here. So we came up, when I became the governor, to say that, what? We have so many countries. I don't want to call any particular country so that it doesn't become a problem. But we have so many countries coming into our state and going into the mining site and taking the entire sand from there and taking them all the way back to their countries to do the processing. Lithium jumped from about $6,000 per ton to $78,000 per ton because of the love for electric vehicles. And that's the craziness that it went. And here in Nasarawa State, I'm sitting on lithium in huge commercial quantities in about 5 different locations. So we came up with what we call executive order. To say that anybody who has the license to come into Nasarawa State to mine lithium, you must also process that lithium in Nasarawa State. And that was the beginning of part of the video you saw. Because we had a company that was so excited about it. Not just the lithium that they saw, but the purity of the lithium that they saw. Because lithium is just like oil. Nigeria is so blessed we have what we call the sweet crude, which takes very little actually to process and to get all the way to the highest quantity. Because when you process, you have your diesel, you have your gasoline, you have your aviation fuel, you have everything, naphtha and the rest of it. So everybody loves the sweet crude. So it's the same thing with this lithium. Everybody loves the Nasarawa lithium, because instead of getting about 4 to 5%, purity, you are actually getting between 9 and 11% purity. So this company made its first investment and built a lithium processing plant called ABDULLAHIA with 3 million metric tons per annum. All of a sudden, the next time, so today, which is the biggest in Nigeria today, the 3 million metric tons. But we have two companies that are already being built. One of it is going to be commissioned in August next month. That one is about 7 million metric tons per annum, and they are already almost completed. It's getting ready to be commissioned. Another one that they have down the line, maybe another 2 years from now, is going to be about 18 million metric tons per annum. So these are the kinds of things that you do, when you provide the leadership. I'm all trying to refer back to the position that these gentlemen are doing. I'm not going to live in Nasarawa State for 2 months. As a matter of fact, I was governor for 4 years. I was re-elected 2 years ago, so I only have 2 years to go. So everything that I'm doing, I'm not doing it for myself. I'm doing it for Nasarawa State, for the young people we have who are just growing up, for the education of the state, for the human capital of the state, for the women of the state. There are so many women in Nasarawa. And so these are the kinds of things actually that are going on. But everything we do, we try as much as possible, to come up with some kind of legal framework that will protect the investors. And that's one of the things that make the investors to come into the state. So we have a very strong institutional foundation. Most of the foundations that we have are backed by documents of law. The first one is the one that we call the PPP law, which we established. That made us establish also a company called the Nasarawa Investment and Development Agency. And the MD of that company is perhaps the youngest guy in this room, seated behind the lady right there. So that company also has the funding to ensure that in case there are some challenges with what you have, we go ahead and protect it with some of the funding. And we are also getting our technical support from the Tony Blair Foundation, as well as the UK NIF. UK NIF is actually the United Kingdom and Nigeria Infrastructure Advisory Fund that come together, to support us. So they do that in order for us to be able to. And we are getting also from the World Bank. Through the World Bank, they support us for the ease of doing business. World Bank identified 5 states in Nigeria, and they are giving them funding through a program called State Action on Business Enabling Reforms, which is called SABA. So Nasarawa State happens to be one of those 5 states that are getting them, and that talks more about land administration, tax construction, which is actually creating for business registration and all kinds of regulatory issues, including with climate and protection of the investors. So those are the kinds of areas that we are going to support that. And we also get involved with the World Bank for support through the framework for responsible and inclusive land-intensive agricultural investment. Because Nasarawa is known actually for 2 areas, mining and agriculture. And that's the reason why some of the biggest farms that we have, that you will find them in Nasarawa State. Today, talking about Mauritius, when I say about sugar, in Africa, the biggest lands for agriculture are actually in Sudan. The Kenana and the White Nile. Kenana is roughly about 40,000 hectares, and the White Nile maybe somewhere around 42,000 hectares. So In Nasarawa State, in one location, Dangote acquired 68,000 hectares of land. So Mauritius get ready for some competition coming from Nasarawa State when it comes to that. So those are the kinds of things that we have done. And for us as a state, we also acquired 10,000 hectares of land and we are doing rice. So that's the one that you saw the Vice President of Nigeria came to commission for our harvest, the first harvest we have, and we have just finished doing the other part. So as I said, I don't want to take you through my entire presentation, but we are excited to be here, and the opportunities in Nasarawa State are there, and I'm looking forward, for more and more discussions in these areas. So why should you think about coming to invest in Nasarawa State? One, because of the reforms. When you talk about reforms in Africa, I'm actually also a witness to that because I travel a lot in Africa. I had the gentleman actually from Egypt talking about the reform, and I think the facilitator also was mentioning, about the reforms that he saw in Egypt. In fact, I've been to Egypt almost 10 times now in the last 1 year. And every time I travel to Rehab and I travel to New Cairo, and what is happening there is completely different. But it's the same thing there. And I love the definition when somebody say, what is it about leadership? You say leadership is taking very strong decisions, very hard one, not knowing that you have a vision and a future and you are going to go to that direction. And I think that's what our President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is doing when he took the decision about withdrawal of subsidy and unification of the FX. Those are very, very difficult decisions to take, and those decisions have given every state in Nigeria today actually, getting allocations between 2 to 3 times of what we used to get, and giving us the opportunity to do 2 to 3 times what we used to do. And that is what is happening. That's why we are seeing the reform, all over, not only in any particular part of Nigeria, but the whole places. So why should we invest in Nasarawa State in particular? We have reform ready and results that are being driven. We have very strong PPP, so we are investment ready, and of course we have all the land that is needed. We have direct access actually to the market because you are the central part of the country. We have a technical institute, the workforce that you do, and we are also one state in Nigeria that are not looking for charity. We are looking for partnership, and we are willing to invest our resources and our funds and our knowledge, our technology, our minerals in order to develop Nasarawa State and Nigeria. Thank you very much, and God bless you.